Well, welcome to Rochester. Thanks for coming, David. Our pleasure. Rex Robinson McHale.
Okay.
A young part of the first quarter of my life was in a place called Bolivar, Pennsylvania, small town near Ligonier, 60 miles east of Pittsburgh in the mountains. Right the day I enlisted in February, and well, I was still in senior class in high school. So the recruiting officer was Johnstown. He said, "Why don't you finish?" A lot of guys took off in our class. I think the whole class enlisted, which wasn't very big, but that's the point. So he asked if I wanted to finish, and I said yes. So about 2 days after I was finished graduating, I was on a train to Johnstown to go with a little box of whatever toiletries. Everything I owned was in my pocket.
So what year was that?
That would be in the spring, June. I think my enlistment was February, but my entry was June, first week of June. Oh, 1944. Well, number one, my father was in the infantry and he was injured in France. He says, "You better join the Navy. You won't have to sleep in the mud." And that sounded pretty good to me. But I was always interested. I was a Sea Scout for a while, too, which had a lot of influence. I knew signaling, Morse code, semaphore, all kinds of code as a kid. And the stars, I studied astronomy on my own so I could shoot a star anytime. So all those things made it a breeze to go in. They looked at me, medical guy, looked at me in bare ass, and he said, "Your one leg's a little bit wrong." I said, "Yeah, I had osteomyelitis as a kid." He said, "You want in or not?" I said, "Yes, you're in," like that. So that was off to Bainbridge, Maryland. Went through boot camp, and then with the qualifications, I tried to get into V6, I think. No, doesn't matter. V6, I think, was educational. I tried to get in the officers' training, and they were filled. To my disappointment, I went to Washington for that. So they said, "Where do you want to go?" Out on a small ship. All I knew was what do you call them, sub chasers and the little ones. So I ended up leaving Norfolk instantly and going straight to Narragansett Island. Narragansett is a bay, not an island. And middle of the night, walked over to the naval base. He says, "You're on the wrong side of the bay. Get in this PT boat." So my first fast ride was on a PT boat. The ship was, went up on the dock with a bag over my shoulder, weighed as much as I did. Boat was raining, of course, and dark, and boat said, "Get the hell out of the way, and we're leaving." So I got my papers there. We'll stand back in that gangway there, the entryway or gangway, whatever, in that hatch. Don't get in the way. So they let me on board. I immediately got sick. We pulled out through Narragansett. We're in and out of Narragansett quite a bit, but then came down into Jacksonville. Things. You want me to keep rambling like this?
Well, let me just ask you. Let me go back to that. Your father had fought over in Europe. So, did that inspire you to want
Of course. A little town, and everybody sold a car, and a depression. Oh, we didn't know it was a depression. We did not, literally. Everybody was so gardening and stuff like that. So he was very, very patriotic, ahead of the American Legion, and he had been gassed in the trenches in France. And he came to in Plattsville Hospital in New York, so he knew injury. At any rate, he was very patriotic. My mother was a registered nurse, the only one in town. So what inspired me was total inspirement. Everybody was good. All my buddies had already gone. They quit school so they didn't have to do algebra and left. So the class was very small by the time.
So when you enlisted, did you ever think that you would just be off our own shoreline, or did you think that you'd be over in the Pacific or someplace
Didn't
like that?
care. I truly didn't care. Naturally, I preferred the Atlantic because I lived there. So I had no compunction about that, but I did ask for a small ship. I didn't want a carrier if I could, or a cruiser or anything. The biggies were mostly over on the other side anyway. So I guess I took what I got.
So with all your experiences, what did they make you? What role did you play on board the ship?
Quartermaster, third, right arm raid. Emphasize that. There were very few right arm raids. But I went in as a seaman. One of those pictures shows a wheel on my right arm, or maybe a stripe, but no, I didn't get third class till later, till I earned it in time. I would have been second class, but the war ended.
So what
But
did you do on board the ship as a quartermaster?
Into the wheelhouse most of the time, or up on the conning tower. I was a captain's talker whenever we went to GQ. I don't know why. My voice isn't that good, or wasn't. Might have been then. Wore a big tin hem.
Yeah, but let's stop. Go ahead.
For a second. Yeah, we're gonna pick all that up.
Your wife is on the phone, I think. 'Cause we can hear you.
You can hear you?
Yeah, we can hear your wife. She's on the phone.
She ought to be in here taking notes. She's a secretary. She taught school Mooney for here. You live in Silver Springs.
I don't live in Silver Spring. I work there, but used to live in Annapolis.
Oh,
That's where I
that's
used
nice.
to live.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. It's so crowded now. There's so many
Oh,
people.
is it really?
Yeah, it's a lot of people that live there. So now I live more towards Frederick, out in western Howard County.
Hmm. Well, just so there's good seafood. I
Oh,
think we used
I
to
love
go.
Annapolis. It's
Yeah,
so
I did
beautiful.
too.
Yeah. So
I
did you
tried-
ever go to the academy for anything when you were doing training?
I
or
tried to
anything?
enlist there, and I
Yeah.
never went back.
Never went back.
No. My brother-in-law, her brother, Shirley's brother, was a Navy officer.
I gotcha.
He had
And he started at the academy, or?
no. He started one of the USNRs, I think.
Okay.
Called. We were all later in life. He was about my age.
Gotcha.
He was on carriers and destroyers. He was the exec on a cruiser. At any rate, I liked the water very much, and I was fascinated with the bottom of it until I had one of that
Until you had that diving.
the damn button. So things changed.
Yeah, things change. Hey, Kevin, did you want to come back in, or? Sure, go right ahead. We're not recording. We were just waiting.
Well, I was
Yeah.
actually, but
Oh, that's
that's
great.
fine.
Mom, do you want to sit in here? You're welcome
Yeah,
to
you're
sit
more
in
than
here.
welcome to sit in here.
She's timid.
No, you're
No,
not in it.
no,
We'll put you
not
off
at
to
all.
the side. You don't have to sit in there.
Woman. She answers to woman.
That's good. You trained her right.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
These
Sure
are,
enough.
these are the good American values that will leave when you do.
Yeah, quite right. And that whistle,
You know?
the kids would just come when any one of them whistled, even to this day. She can't hear it though, it's too
That's
far off of her.
I am going to learn from you today, my friend.
Hiya,
There you go.
how'd you do? Did you see the pumpkin I made for her?
I do. She's all dressed for Halloween.
Carved that last night.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, nice. All right, here we go. You can move that down if you want to be comfortable.
I would ask about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to that.
I'll caution you again about that number 8.
I will. I won't. I'll. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to before you enlisted to Pearl Harbor, because obviously that is an event that, just like any large event that happens in the United States, people remember what they were doing when that happened. You were younger, obviously, when that happened, but how did Pearl Harbor impact you as an American?
Very much. Everybody. And a small town, everybody sort of feels the same about it. First thing we did was heard it. On Pearl Harbor, I remember being in school at the time, in high school, and I know our scoutmaster, we had a pretty active group there. We went out and lowered the flag right away at a half-mast and did it right. And observed all the American traditions like that. Didn't take long because we kept it a secret. You didn't see a lot of pictures of me because there were no cameras aboard except one of the other guys snuck one in to take the Statue of Liberty. But and he asked permission from the captain at the end of the war when we were coming into New York. The only camera I know aboard was that, literally. I have a picture, I think Rick, our son, sent it to you, of the sound pitot tube on the keel was out of water. It was a nice day, and the water was going over the deck, over the top deck. So it was a rough deal, but I asked for it. Did not want to be in a big city. Like the CVE was a small carrier.
Okay, I'm gonna start. He's recording now, so I'm gonna start us over again.
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's go back to Pearl Harbor. How old do you think you were when Pearl Harbor happened?
17.
You were 17 when Pearl Harbor happened?
Correct. Let me back up.
Because you said you were 17
No,
when you
no,
enlisted.
that's incorrect. It was 2 years before that. I was 15, I beg your pardon.
Tell me how Pearl Harbor impacted your small town.
Gotta go, let's get going. Let's be part of it.
Do you
And
think if
lights
you had
were
been 17 at that point, you would have enlisted as well?
Yeah, I think I would have. Oh no, I would not have joined the service. No, I might have tried to get in the officer training, possibly, but I was a forester minded, and so was Kevin. We both graduate foresters. But the answer is no, but the war changed everything. There were no streetlights in our town. As a kid in high school, we used to go walk up to a loading platform of a coal mine on the outside of town looking for trouble. I don't know what. But when we had watches around the county with glass windows like as big as this room, just watching for enemy planes. We thought we were anyway. That was fun for kids. So we would take shifts going up to a place called Fairfield, which was a high point on the mountain where we were, and spend the night or the evening or a shift there. We tried to participate in it any way we could. We wrapped string in balls, saved paper, ironed out the aluminum foil, everything you could do. And once you start something like that in a small town, everybody said, yeah, let's do that.
So what was it like in those 2 years from 15 to being a senior in high school and enlisting yourself? Had a lot of people left your town to enlist?
Yes, anybody older than I was gone. I think I was 17, I was made scoutmaster because we lost a scoutmaster. He's over in Japan, or one of the islands.
So tell me about, because we were able to record leading up to you being on board the ship. So you were on board a small vessel.
Yes.
And you were the quartermaster. Tell us a little bit about life on the ship and what you did in your daily duties.
Well, at some point you say, this is hell. But after a while, hell's not so bad after all. My feet are dry. And my dad promised me a bunk, even though it's only this thick against a steel hull, which is only that thick, and it's already bowed in. It was rough. I still hold on to everything when I walk. There are handholds I blame her for, but I'm using them. Still do that, always will. And watch where you step. I had a bump on underneath my knee where, what's the name? Where a stud comes out of the deck and they wrap around, the lines wrap around the cleat. There was a cleat that hit me when I walked on the outer deck changing shifts. The cleat hit me right there every night that I had that shift. So it was rough, with no cold food, easy on the water, took salt water showers, and everybody smelled the same. So it didn't matter, really didn't matter. What did it feel like? We took, and this is a fact that very few people even believe, once off of Iceland, we took a 72-degree roll on a wave. The wave put us over 72 degrees. The clinometer was right I was on the wheel, tied to the wheel, the steering wheel, of course. And the clinometer was ahead of us, and I watched it go over to 72, hanging on, and then it paused and started back. And you could almost hear everybody on the ship cheer. Because we changed course, we'd hit the wave at I'm going to say a quarter, it doesn't matter. And it shouldn't have, we should have gone straight through it. But that was the con. No, they weren't nobody was outside on the con. They were in the wheelhouse where I was. So he straightened it out and went through it, straightened up and kept going.
So tell us a little bit about your role on the ship. What did you exactly do?
Help the navigator, assist the captain as a talker. Because it was a small ship, I had to assist the signalman, but I knew semaphore and all that stuff. We talked to each other like this and all the time. And semaphore and Morse code, you talk like this.
So when you say talker, what does a talker do?
The old man would say something to me when I was wearing a hard hat up on the flying bridge, and I would repeat it to whomever he wanted. They could hear it, but he had a direct line to every one of his officers while he was skipper. Well, whoever was manning the ship with that. So the talker passed on the information while he was holding glasses, usually. I kept a log when it was my shift, always. Kept a log, shot with the navigator, and plotted. We had a plotting room, turning room, right after the wheelhouse. So I plotted, I knew how to plot and read the difference in longitude on the side, how to make it right with a pair of dividers and stuff like that, and then walking parallel. You know what I'm talking about. So I did that when I could, and occasionally the signalman was pretty reliable, but he needed help sometimes too.
So tell us about how your ship was part of a larger convoy. And if you could explain, can you just say the ship that you were actually on, say the name of the ship you were on, and then explain the convoy that your ship was part of?
All right, there was a trail like a superhighway, like the Pennsylvania Turnpike, of freighters headed for Europe. And they went right up as tight to the coast as they could to stay away from the subs. The subs just sank at will. They sank these freighters, hundreds of them. And the guys on them are gone. We were trying to find...
Was that a German fleet
No,
then?
yeah, the entire German northern fleet was up there. Just anything they wanted to do, they did. Later we found out from that skipper that we picked up, I said, why the hell didn't you get rid of us? He says, we didn't want to waste one torpedo. We wanted to sink all the bread and oats and people on that ship. And I saw a couple on TV that illustrated exactly that. They overplayed it. It was so bad. But they took what they went back to the mother sub down in the middle off the Mediterranean, I think. I don't know why we never got to that mothership, because that would have been smart. We didn't have the lookouts we had now, global. At any rate, that was the main drag up past Nova Scotia over to Reykjavik and then back and forth. And what did I say, it was on the eighth fleet? I don't know. I get excited, I forget something sometimes.
Tell us for the camera what ship you were on.
USS Bremen 104, destroyer escort, USS Bremen.
Okay.
300 feet long, 26 feet beam, and about 16 feet depth. It had 2 screws. Ours was a diesel. Ours carried torpedoes, which was unusual, very unusual. Never fired them. Might have fired them, test them once in a while. But they were one of the few that had torpedoes on. The deck, the boat deck had torpedoes on them. We had twin, maybe it was 3-inch 50s, a couple of 40s and a couple of 20s. And that was our armament, plus the Hedgehogs. And that's extremely important, because in my voice, I will say that changed the Battle of the Atlantic.
Did you have the Hedgehogs on board right away, or was that later?
I don't know. What was later? They put them on in Brooklyn Navy Yard, I think. Probably, doesn't matter, but probably. But they really worked.
So was your ship, tell us about the whole convoy that your ship was part of. I mean, your mission was to go from Reykjavik all the way down to Cuba, correct?
Yes, south of Cuba.
So can you tell us a little bit about the whole convoy? How many ships were part of the convoy?
I don't know. The whole berth was not. Our unit, I know we had 8. Our actual unit was 8. And I think Skipper would know where the rest of them were. I don't think I knew. But it wasn't a convoy as such. We were sharpshooters, look at it that way, and gone where to fill a hole where we knew or hoped we would find something.
When you first found out your mission, when you went on board the ship, was it a surprise to you that this battle was happening in the Atlantic?
Probably not a surprise, because I'm a hillbilly. I live in Pennsylvania mountains. I was pleased there. That's great. And I don't know how big it was. We never got them all together. We would go in Narragansett Bay, which would have at the most 2 of these carriers in, and maybe a half a dozen rotating DEs. We rotated a lot, but we worked with mostly 4. And if you see and the skippers knew the pattern, they were always moving around. One of them was always 700 yards behind the carrier. And that was a reason for that, I can tell you that too.
We're rolling.
Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk about the mission of when you first learned of what your mission was going to be, meaning to scout the Atlantic of the U.S., Atlantic seaboard of the U.S. Did you ever imagine that there was already a battle taking place along the coastline of the United States?
Nobody did. The security wouldn't. I knew what was going on in the officers' quarters because I was there, not in the quarters, but where they worked. So I knew, and we had to keep our mouths shut, because once in a while we'd start a rumor, hey, did everybody know we're going to Bermuda? And one of our quartermasters would haul a chart out of Bermuda and walk down the deck, and the next thing you know, everybody says, hey, we're going to Bermuda. And you walk and take that jungle jacket off and we'll get ready for something else, just for activity. So nobody in the ship knew. Those poor guys down in the below decks, what a hateful place to be. I mean, rumble of screws, unbalanced screws would drive you nuts. And they didn't see anything. They got their information from us, which we said we're headed south, we're headed north, or get a chance to come upside and look over and see Long Island.
So tell us the mission was all along the Atlantic. Can you tell us from where to where that the ships sailed?
All I know is where we were, and I had no right to know the others unless we were to join them. Our ship, right before I got aboard, went to Dakar with another ship in the name, I forget which one. Two of these went hell-bait for elections for Dakar, Africa, and came back with $60 million worth of gold, Polish treasure, the entire Polish treasury, and dropped it off in New York, and then went about hunting subs.
So when you hunted subs, where did you go from?
Probably filling, either Narragansett Bay. I don't know whether I ever went into Bar Harbor. Narragansett Bay was a favorite. British, or if we had any repairs, it would go to Brooklyn Navy Yard. We did not go south into any, yes, we did a couple times, but I forget where. One in Florida, I think, once. Then this Green Cove Springs is Florida. It's inland, and that was almost to be standby out of business because I hitchhiked around Florida when I got a chance.
Did you go from, so I'm going to take a step back. So when you sailed, you'd gone all the way up to Reykjavik, Iceland, correct?
Correct.
All the way down to, I think you had mentioned Cuba in our call, Puerto Rico.
Outside of, right around Cuba and south.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the entire time that you were on board the ship, what was it like not knowing that you could write home to your family about your mission? Everything was just top secret?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got a leave or 2, 3 days a couple times, and you just shut up since nobody talked like that. It was a lie if we did. It was a joke. Hey, we're headed for Bermuda, just to make somebody happy for a few minutes. No, we did not. Security was, we had no cameras, no phones, no anything. And if you got a letter off, you have to wait till the mailbag came across from the carrier, which came. And we cooperated with that small carrier, and we got our supplies from them. We got our fuel from them, and rotated back and forth. I want to tell you about this guy that crashed. I was on the helm, midnight or whatever, didn't matter, it was pitch black. And we had one light on the top of the, not a yard, on the mast, on top of the radar on the mast, one little LED, just because that was when you were doing what they call plane guard. When the guys were landing, they could at least see one thing down there that was okay. And we were 700 yards to the port of the stern of the carrier. And if something happened on the carrier, we were there, partially for protection. The other 3 ships would be rotating around the carrier all the time. And those guys were flying SNJs, the old, that's important. And it was landed like that, not like this. It was a great big problem. This guy was an SNJ at night, missed a hook or something, but he went off the port side. We picked him up 4.5 minutes later, and I'm being on the wheel. The guy's telling me which way to move, right or left, a little bit, or port or starboard, a little bit. In the meantime, the boat crew had everybody on the ship on the one side, or not everybody, somewhere on the right in case. It was a backup. And he went over the side with a life jacket on and hooked to a bunch of guys up on the ship. he grabbed the pilot and we hauled him up. Sent him straight to the showers and gave him a new uniform. My buddy Taylor was in there, or whatever he was, ironing his clothes. Next morning, we put him on a chair. What was it called? A chair like a pair of panties with holes in when our feet went through. On double wire going over to the carrier, we're watching the antenna was on the outside underneath the lip of the landing area. Those antennas were sticking out there. Our yard arm was awful close to that. We had to watch it. We didn't take their antenna off. So I think we were always successful. That was a risk. We'd run this guy over, always dip him into the water a little bit like this, just to get his feet wet, back up on the ship and hang on, and they put a big bucket full of ice cream on and sent over to us. That was the reward.
The reward, right. I think those are called breeches buoys. That's how they brought people off of ships when they grounded.
Well, there's all kinds of things like that.
So tell us a little bit about your mission in hunting subs.
They were very evasive. Very evasive. The subs were small, and they knew where we were. They actually, we found out later, didn't seem to, somebody found it out, but they would stay beneath us. When we were looking for them, they would stay a couple fathoms underneath us, far enough away, I guess. But literally, if we were to change, which we did frequently on a hunt like that, they would stay there till they got their target. Then they would dash forward, full all ahead, faster than we could, and they're gone. And what happened was they saw a quarry up ahead, throw a torpedo at it and go at the next one. So our mission was to destroy them, which we did occasionally. I never saw one. Our sister ship got one right beside us, and I guess I saw that, but we didn't. We were operated as a unit for destroyer escorts. So that's when the hedgehogs come into play. The reason they could stay beneath us is because we couldn't hit them up ahead. We threw depth charges port and starboard, blew them out, dash cans full of dynamite, blew them off the port and starboard and aft, and rolled them off like barrels off the stern, but none forward. When the hedgehogs came in through, you told me 26 or 24, whichever the number is, straight out ahead, way out, and they had props on the end of them. And they were just like a big firecracker type thing. When one would go off, they would all go off at a depth that we figured they were at. So that would puncture a hole in the sub, and that was it. And that's when we outwitted them, because that's the first thing that captain they rescued found, the Nazi captain, wanted to know what in the hell how would we get ahead of them. Simple as that, it worked.
So tell us about the encounter where sounds like your sister ship, or when it in your convoy actually sunk one of the U-boats, but it went down and then came back up again, and they actually were able to. There were survivors from it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that encounter?
I don't think that I'm not. I better be careful. I think they all were lost on that bomb. We got there's something on the con on our ship that gave us a attaboy or something like that. I don't recall any medal or anything because we were tracking too. They got them. and they got credit for it. But I don't recall that skipper that I said, the German guy that they found or got, captain, wasn't within our sight. We just knew about it right away. Our skipper had contact with, right south of here in Seneca Lake, there's a tower, and I missed the name of it when we drove by once in a while going for apples and so forth. I said, I'm going to say LIDAR, and I think that's wrong. A LIDAR tower, was made specifically for this gang of ships up and down there. And that far inland, all right, that far inland, why the hell do they have a radio tower for the Atlantic sitting on the northern end of Seneca Lake? Well, of course I knew why. It's the highest spot, direct line out to the section you're talking about. I wish I could think of it. It doesn't matter. It's still there.
Right. You okay? Did you have to change again?
I'm gonna have to initiate another one in a couple minutes, but we're good for now.
Okay. All right. So that was 8, 9. I'm just trying to think. So,
It was kind of dumb. We should have gone on further, but the subs were in there, I guess. At any rate, they knew what they were doing. So that was we heard stories about the locals in there hanging lanterns on mules and cows, ringing a lantern and a bell. The bells, of course, hang around the cow with the pasture close to the edge of the sea. But they hung lanterns on them so the old ships ahead of ours would come in there and say, "There's the shore, let's go." Bang. And the guys would be waiting there to pick up their booty. That's just an aside that I kind of disgusted of.
So did you ever go ashore in North Carolina at all?
No, because there were no ports there. I had no reason to. Very close, very close. That was a point we had to, it sticks out there rather nicely. That was a point. And I don't know how far up. We went to Jacksonville quite a bit, which is the entry to the Green Cove Springs there. We went in there. Matter of fact, I had to shoot the height of that first bridge coming in Jacksonville. This navigator says, "Do you think we'll clear that bridge with our antenna?" I said, "Hell yeah." He said, "You better measure it." He was that way. He wanted to measure everything. Shoot that star? Yeah, do it again. And he trusted the old way very much. The clock, stopwatch, everything. And if you could see a star, he wanted to know where it was. And so I was excited by that, very excited. Enjoyed it very much.
So what do you think was your most memorable experience aboard the ship?
Well, how about a mini? Walking off the deck at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and putting 2 feet on the ground and watching them, and they didn't move. Everybody just wanted to put their feet on the ground right there. Okay, now breathe. Because we rocked all the time. The thing was like a cork. Most memorable? I guess I don't know. I have to admit,
Kind of a cool story.
it was enjoyable. I was a kid growing up looking for a profession, and then they became with it. And I had trained as a Boy Scout, Eagle, and all that stuff. I have a couple of commendations. Delta Chi fraternity and Alpha Phi Omega in Penn State. So got a forestry degree after that. So I would have stayed in the Navy if the guy hadn't clicked 2 dimes together and said out. And that was my medical exam. They wanted rid of all the costs at the end of the war, and we were driven out like cattle. A couple of guys took their sea bag and the whole works and dropped it outside the garbage can. But not I. I probably still have it if she hasn't thrown it away.
So tell us a little bit about the end of the war. I mean, where were you when you found out that it was over?
We had decommissioned and down in Green Cove, and I was a baby in the crowd, so I was the last one out. I think, pretty much so. Then, where was I in Green Cove Springs, where Disney World is now? And I was out. So by that time, I said, well, it was June, I think. I wanted to go to Penn State, so forestry school, so, okay, you're on. And I had to take another class to get into school, but I did, summertime. And I'm back to Bolivar. Got off the train, Bolivar, Pennsylvania Railroad ran through there. Guy met me and said, "You want to play ball?" Sure. I still have a sea bag on it, so I joined a softball team right away. Anyway, I had Boy Scout troop there and stuff like that. Well, I worked summer camps no, that was before that. Summer camps from the time I was 12 years old.
So this battle of the Atlantic was actually one of the longest battles of World War II. Over 30,000 people died, and 3/4 of the U-boat fleet and people on board the U-boats lost. Did you, when you were done, when you were finished with the Navy, and as you were growing older, did it ever occur to you that how big this battle was, and I mean, if you were to walk into a Rochester history class right now, what would you want to say to those students about this secret battle?
I was going to say there's a gal named Katie who informed me that it was the biggest battle in the war, and she knew, I didn't. We worried, we were concerned that we were ordered to stand by, which we did in case there was a flare-up, and at some point that graduated. So we were warned about the war's ending and start decommissioning these ships. They were junk, man. They were junk. Right prior to that, when we had the feeling that the Pacific was still cleaning up, the word was, "Hey, do you know we're going to the Pacific, going to the Panama Canal? I wonder why." We thought we might be sent to help there, but the ships weren't worth it. They were tired. They were built overnight by a bunch of good welding women, and it worked. They did it. I got to tell you, aboard ship, I'm not answering your question. I shouldn't. I was told to answer questions, not to float, but they can't. At any rate, the condition on the ships were so primitive. Not only we didn't have room for refrigeration, but we didn't have room for sanitation. So there was a place on the ship that had, I don't know how long, doesn't matter, had a V trough out of tin metal like that, big long V trough, say 20 feet, with borders in between it, just a panel in between, and two boards across the V top that she sat on. And the outside water, seawater was.
So I'm just gonna quick ask you again. You said you hadn't sunk the U-boat itself, but that you were part of the group that was there to support it. What did you find out later about when the U-boats sank on board your vessel? How did you find out about that information, and when you found out about the survivors and all that, how did you learn about it?
I can't remember. I'm not quite sure, because as soon as they spoke that, we all wondered what was going on when they installed our hedgehogs. Man, these things look awful. I mean, they sound awesome, and they were. It might have been about that time. Uh, I don't ever recall anyone saying I'm saying something they shouldn't hear. There was always an officer right beside where I was anyway. I knew enough to shut up. I wouldn't have told that to anybody. If they wanted to ship the note, they would tell them. Because we hit shore once in a while, Narragansett Bay usually, for refuel. And
Did everyone on board the ship know that you were hunting subs?
oh yeah,
Everyone knew.
oh, absolutely, no question about it. And they knew. I guess they knew when we were near one because they could tell from our actions, the ship's action. You'd get somebody on the side box back from the stern and he'd say, "Who the hell's on the who the hell's driving this thing? It's wiggling all over the place." He didn't know, but we were correcting, of course.
So, yeah.
What was it like, knowing that they're in the water that you're in?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll go to that. I mean, was it spooky at all, knowing that there were these subs that were underneath you, and that's what you were? I mean, was it?
I'm going to say no because it was a given. That's what we were there for. Oh yeah, if you knew there was one that close, you'd shut up about it. Knew you're scaring everybody. Again, on the bridge, we wouldn't have told anybody that.
Right, you're just hunting on. I think I would think that because you didn't know that battle was happening before you took place, and that to know that it was all top secret, and your families had no idea that these U-boats were so close to the Atlantic shoreline. I mean, it was a big mission that you were undertaking. Really big mission.
I didn't know or didn't appreciate it. It's my calling. That's it. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of guns. And
How did you find out? I mean, obviously the captain knew that your other ship on the convoy had sunk a U-boat. Did he talk to you about it at all, or?
He would have probably picked that up in his office. But he had a little office, and actually the exec had an office about this big, right in the chart room where we were. I can't answer clearly about that. It might have been, hey, shut down.
What was your opinion of the men that were in the U-boats?
Okay. What was
What
your?
do you wonder about them?
So you were 17, and here you were a quartermaster, 17, 18, a quartermaster, standing next to your captain. Did you ever think about the Germans? Like, what were your thoughts about the Germans and their role in the war?
We called them Nazis for one thing. Called them other names that I won't say, because that was a part of the game. Profanity is unbelievable out on the water. Unbelievable. You have to train yourself when you go ashore not to say the wrong thing. I'm still left to miss it once in a while. Germany, Hitler was a org, naturally, and Mussolini was the same. I mean, why the hell are they doing that? And we know they're blowing hell out of London and all that good stuff. Oh, I got into that, by the way. Ooh, that's another part of my story.
What was the London part?
So you see if this is worth it. I got out, went to work at a secret place in Washington. There's an island on the Anacostia River that had looked like a bunch of garbage shacks. And I worked in there for a while. But what am I trying to say? One of the guys that I work with told me his life story. He was a pilot, a hotshot pilot, and he was working there with me on a couple projects. And he told me about, first of all, we were looking for air photo. Everything was photographed from my life on, from that on. And they found a ski lift that launched a V2s, I think they called them, whatever they called them. And he said they were starting to put them on the French coast, and they wanted to make sure. So they hooked hell, I forgot the name of one of the hottest fighter planes there was, doesn't matter. They hooked it up with an aerial camera to run full speed at about 1,000 feet of film on 9x9, and he flew it sideways. They put it on the hull, and he flew plane up the English Channel sideways, taking pictures, high-speed pictures of all these little huts they were building, and brought them back, and our photo interpreters would literally measure the board. That's where photogrammetry comes in. Measure the boards and say, yeah, those are imported from Germany. The width, their width was metric and ours or whatever. They had reason to believe it, and they understood what they were doing. And it was all hidden. They would count some truck tracks going in and said, that's no cider mill, that's a B2, and then pretty soon the ramp would go up and I'd go in and splash it. That, I was in on that part of the war too. That was, yeah, why would that be? Well, he was doing that while we were doing the other, yeah, at the same time.
Okay.
But that part of it's really part of the war, the Atlantic, as far as they were blowing London up. At any rate, that's just a tidbit.
Right. So in general, your feeling towards the Germans was that their Nazis were out to get them right now.
Matter of fact, I guess I hold a grudge. I think they still are. We put them back on their feet. I worked for Bausch and Lomb, and their equipment was all old and optical equipment. They works around the clock for the optics, and everything was old. At the end of the war, they were huffing and puffing, and we had sent all the good equipment over to Italy and Germany so they could re-up their lives. I knew that, and that annoyed me a little bit. I was thinking, why the hell, you're taxing Bausch and Lomb, and you're sending it to Germany? They not only don't appreciate it, the only people who thanked us was Finland. Anyway, a little political on my part. I'm still ticked at the Russians, or the Germans. A couple of things I've seen they've done lately, man, they're getting ready for war. Which is their nature, damn it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to politicize.
But what about the individual, like the guy that's in that U-boat?
I never saw him. All this came back to us through our officers, yeah. I never saw him. Nobody ever saw him. I said, quite nobody. They immediately encased him. They picked up a couple of his men also, and they were, I don't know what they were doing, but they were kept away from him. He was isolated till they got him into a camp in North Carolina someplace. We knew that.
So you knew that he was taken to a prisoner of war camp
And
in
they
North
were,
Carolina.
that's right, and they were probably, well, they put screws in your hand. I don't know. They were getting the information because he was curious. He's probably an American citizen now.
So when did you find out about that story, about the captain of that U-boat that was sunk by your convoy? Because when we did the research, they actually picked up 30 people.
Well,
it was including, and then the captain actually died on board, and they put him to sea.
I wonder if that's,
It was, I think,
that could be a fake.
that was off of Nova Scotia. I wonder if it was prior to you being on the Bremen.
I don't know. They could have picked up 30 with him, 5 or 10 or 30. I wouldn't even guess. But you're allowed to lie. If I say the word spook, I'll get kicked. I know why they call them spooks. Do you ever use that?
Mm-mm.
Don't. Somebody will kick you. But we called them spooks because they walk through walls. I was working in PIC, Photo Interpretation Center, in an area. I had a chart, working on a chart, and all of a sudden they come in and put chicken wire all over the area right in front of me, stapling it on the board, the walls. What the hell are they doing? We're not chickens. Never mind. Then they put plasterboard on top of that, stapled it up, and left. Because then they put a door in it. And certain guys from PIC took the pledge, and they'd disappear every day in and out of the door. So one of the cartoonists drew a picture of them walking right through the wire, and we called them spooks from that day on. And they lost their voice. They wouldn't even look at you in case you'd read their lips. But that's another game.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. So there were about 3 to 4 U-boats that were sunk off of North Carolina in the area that you sailed through. It was prior to you enlisting in the Navy. But what we're trying to do at NOAA and the National Marine Sanctuary System is we're trying to protect the area off of North Carolina as a battlefield. So we're calling it the graveyard of the Atlantic potential. It's a potential expansion because currently we protect the Monitor It's the Monitor, the ironclad Monitor.
Yeah.
And that was our very first National Marine Sanctuary. And so what they're doing right now is they've that's how you found out about this was because they went and did an expedition to look at a couple of the U-boats this past summer.
Did you do that?
We were supposed to go down, but a hurricane kept us from going. But the guys you were on the phone with the other day, they were in the subs looking at the U-boats.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get support from the people of North Carolina and others to make it a National Marine Sanctuary, the whole battlefield. So essentially, it would be like the Battle of Gettysburg, as it's protected today. It would be protected like that. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think a battlefield should be protected?
Absolutely. What you're doing, I endorse. However, I have to say, there are 500 American ships up along the Nova Scotian, Iceland area, sunk 530 or something like that. A huge number. But you're not going to build an American monument in Nova Scotia. That's another country. The answer is yes. I'll support it any way I can.
Good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is there
No,
anything
I'm
else
sad.
that, from your experience,
Yeah,
that
would you
you'd
like-
to share with the American public
Bef-
from the Battle of the Atlantic?
Did you know that? How does that start?
Did you know that the battle
Then
happened?
give them a copy. It outlasted the Pacific, or I don't know what. Okay, another headline that makes them read the whole thing. If I saw, did you know that, I would look for the next subject line and then turn the page. Gotta advertise. I don't know how. Put it on. We watch PBS good bit.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do with this. Is that will be an entitlement. That's why we're doing this documentary. Is essentially to tell people that this battle occurred, and that's why we need to protect this battlefield.
I'll tell you something else I would do. I would recommend that you get in touch with our oldest son and say, would you volunteer to help us? He will inundate you with bullshit like you wouldn't believe, because he's good at it. It's his job, it was his life, and he's already retired and eager.
That's our other son.
Yeah, Rex, the one that contacted us to begin with.
If you want to shoot elk, talk to him.
Oh, that's good.
We're all hunters, but I don't do it anymore.
Well, sounds like you've been a hunter for a long time, part of your life.
Michigan.
Yeah. So what?
Is there anything that we haven't talked about?
Yeah. Is there? I mean, in specific, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you feel should be part of this that we could get a
Well,
soundbite from?
Let's see. You have to use the word North Carolina. Throw the word Hatteras in there pretty much, because the seacoast drives down I-95. Wonder what the hell that is. I would say get North Carolina the responsibility of getting that out. Help. We need your help. I don't know how to do it. That's not my game. But the answer is that advertising. You buy gas when you see a sale. And what else could you do? DAV, what's DAV? American Vets,
Disabled.
American Legion, get all these people on your side. If you can contact some guy like our oldest son living in North Carolina, he'll give the rest of his life to you.
Do you know of anybody else that was in your convoy that's still alive?
Not a one,
Really?
not one. I'm sorry to say that. That means I'm next.
You look great. You're not going anywhere.
You're right.
Soon. It must be your wonderful wife that's keeping you alive.
We shake hands at nighttime.
Aw.
No,
It's nighttime.
I think you're doing a great job. And if you can get Rick to volunteer to help you,
Yeah.
he may bother you, but
Yeah.
that's part of it. He'll do it till you're. He's putting monuments up for Gettysburg because my granddad.
Oh, that's actually. Why don't you give us one more thing, and that's tell us the history, the military history of your family.
Let's go back to my grandfather, who was dead when I was born in '26. Was a bugler with the 4th Pennsylvania Cavalry, a bugler, and we don't know for sure how old he was. He was probably 15 or so, but he served. His enlistment was with the Union was 3 years. He served 3 years and went to all the little battles of Jeb Stuart. Jeb Stuart was coming up from the south, moving west to deter the fact that they were building a huge. They wanted Philadelphia, and he was making a lot of noise there and running these little battles in every little town. The town of Aldie down in West Virginia, where our other son, lives. He was in Aldie. We have his diary. Rick has his diary, and it's not the seacoast if you're only interested in coast, but he ran. Jeb Stuart ran him, chased him out. Next day they chased him out. It was battle clash, and we have a sword, his bugle, the whole night. He has it, of course. I don't anymore. The rest of the kids don't care because he's so busy doing it himself. We get all of the benefit. So that was it. And the next one was Shirley's dad, to keep with the family, was in World War I in France. And my dad was in the infantry, and a private in the infantry. He was not a bugler. He's the only one that wasn't a bugler, so as I was.
So your dad was in the infantry in France in World War One.
Yeah, and he was, I think I mentioned that.
All right, let's hold it right there for a second. We can get more memory cards.
Who else we have? Of course, we had uncles and so forth.
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
A lot of them.
Did they? That's where they take them up to the World War II memorial in
Right.
D.C., right?
That's
All
right.
the memorials,
Yep.
actually.
Yeah. Oh, you.
We all wore an orange hat and this.
There you go. Nice.
You have to keep him from wearing all these.
All these hats.
But it just might be a good source of information.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah, he escorted me.
Okay, so what we're gonna have you do is we're gonna have you let's just hold these. Just hold them with both. I'll take that for you. Just hold them with both hands. Just hold it like that, like kind of. Is that good, David?
I had hair back then.
Who's that?
Who's that?
Who's that picture of?
Rex R. McHale. 251-2576.
I'm gonna have you hold this one. Can you tell us who's in this picture?
I don't know what the guy's name is.
Where was that? Was it right when you enlisted?
In
or
the
was
side
it-
yard. This is when I was a seaman, quartermaster striker, with one of my buddies from the ship. Who's that? Rex McHale. And the other chap, I've forgotten his name.
Okay, and then we'll just have you hold this one.
Rex Robinson McHale.
So what is that card?
I don't know. I can't read it.
It looks like it almost looks like when you came out of the Navy.
Is to certify that V6 third class. They might have given that. Yeah, it's back in the front.
ID card, I think.
It was not a retirement, but told when I was in the U.S. Navy, or ascertained, or whatever the word might be. Are you a turtle?
You good? All right.
You didn't answer me.
What's that? A turtle? What is a turtle? Are you a turtle?
See, we're too old for this, Rex.
Navy slang again.
Navy slang?
That ID card of his with his photo on it. I
Yeah.
wonder if we have him. Can you explain what that is? Can you
This
hold it up and explain what that is? Yeah.
it might be interesting because we all carried Liberty card.
And what does that mean?
Access for legally being off the ship, whether it's going into a Quonset Bay area, Navy Yard, Brooklyn Navy Yard, or anything. I knew a guy that forgot his Liberty card, and the gal at the desk really beat on him. So he pulled up his shirt and he had his name tattooed on his front, and she threw him in jail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now,
Well-
if I can just get you